If you work with multiple AI model providers, then you already know the pain. Every provider has a separate API that requires a completely different code setup. This makes working across multiple models turn into a massive headache. That's where LiteLLM comes in. LiteLLM is an open source tool created by Berry AI that solves this problem by letting you use a single API with a unified syntax across every major model provider. During the demo today, I will be using the Python SDK, but LiteLLM also works when using it through a proxy server. I will be working in VS Code, but you can use any editor or IDE you choose as long as it can run Python code. First things first, we need to install all of our dependencies. So of course, we will be installing the LiteLLM package right here. And we will also need to use a package called python.env, which allows us to authenticate or to save our API keys from the various model providers as environment variables that can then be used by LiteLLM. So let me go ahead and install that real quick, and I will pause it and come back when it's finished. Okay, so now that that is finished, we will go ahead and import our functions from those packages. We have a load.env function, which I'll show you in a minute. And then we have this completion function from LiteLLM, which is basically the main function that is used to call the models using LiteLLM. Okay, next thing to do is to load our API keys. I'm going to glance over this real quick, but I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. If you don't already know, you will first need to create an API key at these at the different model providers' websites. For today, we will be using Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, and DeepSeek models. So I had to create an account and create an API key and add like a payment method. And then what you do is you save your API key in a file called .env. And I'll show you this env demo file because I don't want to actually show you the real .env file since it has my API keys. And then you would use, if you're using these providers, you would use these keywords, and then you would just copy and paste your actual API key right here. So then when we run this load.env function, it looks at your .env file and saves those API keys as environment variables so that the models can be accessed through LiteLLM. Okay, so now we are ready to actually use LiteLLM. What we are going to do today is a super simple example. We are going to write a haiku about soccer 4 different times with 4 different models. So you can see right here that we are using Claude Haiku 4.5 from Anthropic, GPT-4o Mini from OpenAI, Gemini 3.6 Flash from Gemini, and DeepSeek v4 Flash from DeepSeek. And notice that the syntax is exactly the same, even though I'm using these different models. The syntax is very simple. Here's our completion function that we imported from the LiteLLM package, and that requires a few different arguments. We have our model, and obviously the model is going to be different depending on what we're using. And then we have our messages argument, which is going to be the same regardless of model. It's going to ask for a role and the content, which will basically just be the prompt. Okay, and then we tell it to write a haiku about soccer. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, so now that we've saved the responses in these variables, let's go ahead and print them and see what they look like. Notice that the response format is exactly the same. So again, I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but the great thing about LiteLLM is that the code syntax is exactly the same regardless of the model you're using. So I printed out each of the responses from each of these models. So hopefully that shows you just how easy that was to access 4 different models from 4 different model providers with the exact same code and same syntax. So how does this work? You can think of LiteLLM as a translator. Let me switch over to this diagram that is helpful to understand this. So basically LiteLLM is like this middle layer translator between your LiteLLM code and the actual model provider's API. So you'll write the code in LiteLLM format. Then LiteLLM is going to figure out which model you're using. And for this example, it's using a Anthropic model, Claude Haiku 4.5. And it's going to say, okay, so it's using a Anthropic model. Let's translate this code into the Anthropic API format. Let's let it do its thing. We'll get the response back, and we'll translate the response back into the LiteLLM format. That happens behind the scenes, sort of abstracts it all away so that you don't have to worry about it. And all you have to worry about is one way of writing code, which is the LiteLLM way, no matter what model you're actually using. So just to drive that point home even more, I'll show you 2 quick examples. So this is the exact same request that we used up above using Claude Haiku 4.5 to write a haiku about soccer. So this is what it looks like when we are using LiteLLM. When we hit go, LiteLLM is going to figure out that this is an Anthropic model, and then it's going to convert it or translate it into something like this using Anthropic's API format. It's going to get the response back and give it back to you in LiteLLM format. One more time, just to drive the point home even more, if we're using an OpenAI model like GPT-4o mini, here's what we submit using LiteLLM. It's going to convert that code into OpenAI's format and give it back to you in the LiteLLM format. You don't have to worry about any of this. You don't have to go to OpenAI's docs or Anthropic's docs, figure out the right format to work with the API. You just have to remember this format. LiteLLM will do everything else for you behind the scenes. I wanted to show you one more thing. Here's some links to the docs, the GitHub repo, a getting started documentation, and the model catalog, which I actually found to be really helpful. Okay, so this is basically just a catalog of all the different models that are available when you're working with LiteLLM. So you can see there's over 2,600 models, 140 plus providers. And then I can go here and filter for the different models. So if I want to use an Anthropic model, click Anthropic in the dropdown. I can search, by name. I can search by input and output token, mins, and then I can go through it. And here's all the different Anthropic models available to me. The one I did in the example was this, Cloud Haiku 4.5. You can see the cost, the max outputs, max inputs, and then you can also see the different features available. But the part that I like the most is it gives you the code that you can use. So you can literally just copy and paste that and start using it. Also, I mentioned you can use LiteLLM as a proxy. So it also gives you the code for that as well. So yeah, that's it. That's the end of the demo. Hopefully that was helpful. I have a link in the description to my GitHub repository where this code is saved. So you can download it or clone it and run this code yourself if you'd like. I hope you were able to see just how simple and intuitive it is to work with many different models using LiteLLM. If this was helpful, please like my video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.